Welcome back to County Connection. For this next segment, we're going to be talking about a mine cleanup that is taking place in the Peru Creek drainage up near Montezuma. And here to tell us all about it are Brian LORCH, our Director of Open Space and Trails. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Julie.
And we have DUANE NEWELL, who is an on-scene coordinator for the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And we're delighted to have you as a guest in the studio today, DUANE.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. So EPA right now is working on a cleanup of a mine called the Jumbo Mine, and that is in the Peru Creek Basin up in the Keystone Montezuma area. And so, Brian, can you take us back in time about 100 years ago, or maybe more, and tell us what was going on in this area of Summit County?
Sure. Summit County was, we all think of it as a ski area, but it was originally developed and settled as mining. And mining in this area was a very mixed bag of gold, silver, lead, zinc. A lot of different things came out of these mines because they tend to hang together in the deposits. And so depends what part of Summit County you're in, but a lot of the mines up in the Montezuma area had a little more silver in them as compared to in the Breckenridge area. They were mainly going for the gold. But again, the population in this area was very close to what it is today. There were a lot of people up in these hills chasing the dream of finding gold. The Jumbo mine itself is on the way up Peru Creek, which was one of the original toll roads. The Argentine Pass Toll Road was one of the original ways that people got mine supplies and gold and silver in and out of Summit County. So it was a pretty busy place at that time.
Right. It's kind of mind-boggling to think about that, how busy it was and the routes that people took to and where they lived at these high elevations to, as you say, pursue the dream.
And environmental concerns were no concern. I mean, that was just, the environment was in your way at that time. And so although that may be seen that way in some cases now, but in general, it was just something to get out of the way. And so people were digging wherever they could. They were very often just dumping their tailings or their mine waste right into the streams because that was a good way to get rid of it. And so that's the legacy that we're dealing with now. In many cases, people, when they no longer were producing from those mines, they just walked away. And in many cases, those are still owned by individual landowners. And so under the law, under the Clean Water Act and other laws, that owner still has some responsibility for those cleanups. But it's not like the EPA or the federal government is trying to chase down people that don't have hardly any assets to do the cleanups. So in cases like the Jumbo, it's a situation of an innocent landowner who bought it without real knowledge of what the impacts were here. And the EPA, the county, whoever can come in and help get this thing cleaned up as compared to just sticking with the law, which would basically stick it to him because he's the last one there. And so that's what we're working together with the EPA to try to pull a piece of property.
Okay. So DUANE, can you tell us specifically about what is the situation at the Jumbo mine site and why is it threatening water quality? Sure.
The situation came about through the Snake River Water Coalition. They did I guess it was a report about in the 80s. It was the original one, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, somewhere and then another later one as well.
And then it was updated in 2013. So the Water Coalition, with the state's involvement, and I believe EPA funding as well, and some other funding that they had, I think, but I'm not positive on that, they went and identified a lot of the mines in the Snake River watershed. So they looked at those, they did some assessments in the area and determined the top polluters of the water basin in the Peru Creek Valley. So one of them was the Pennsylvania mine, which was the #1 causing the issues in the watershed. So that was cleaned up, and we still do a little work up there, but not much. I think it wrapped up in 2014 up there. So we had 2 OSCs up there working with the state. The state was actually up there when we were there 2 weeks ago putting in some monitoring wells and on top of that. So they also identified another mine, and I can't remember the name of it, and it was cleaned up as well up there. And then Jumbo Mine, I believe, was the third one. They wanted the adit water, the adit to the mine had collapsed back in the late 60s.
And for folks who may not be familiar with that term, what's an adit?
So that's the tunnel that goes back into the mountain. So that's how the miners would go back into the mine, and they'd have like an ore carts, and they would mine it out, and they'd bring out the ore and everything. And there's some confusion about this mine because of just a lack of information on it. It was a fairly small mine, so there's a waste rock pile out front. The owner of the current owner of the property said the past owner had said that there was a small mill there as well, and that the prior owner was actually able to go 500 feet back into the mine before there was some oxygen issues. His light started going out. He had one of the old headlamps that would start to dim when you got less oxygen in the air for the flame to burn, so he then would back out of it at that situation. So, and then it collapsed before he had purchased the mine, the current owner.
Okay.
So, and when the attic collapsed, it just collapsed, and then water started flowing out of it. A lot of the mines will have, you know, natural groundwater flowing out of them, and the miners will deal with that by putting a ditch along the side of the adit, so it'll flow out, and the miners aren't walking or working in it. At least in the older mines. Now they put pumps in and pump it out and get rid of it, you know, and so it's not in their way, and they've got machinery, whereas before they'd have to go in and blast and dig, and it was a lot rougher time back then, definitely. So they identified it in their report, and EPA and the state worked with them on numerous occasions, and when funding became available, we went in and did those 2 other mines, and then some funding came available now. So we came in and addressed the issue with the adit water flowing across the waste rock pile. So as the water flows across, it is slightly acidic. It would pick up metals and dissolve them in, and it would also pick up sediment off of the mine and the waste tailings as it was coming out, so it would wash the waste rock into the river. So we wanted to address that by fixing the channel. So we put a liner in it and in the channel to keep the adit water coming out of the mine away from washing that waste rock down. So we've noticed over the course of the year there's a fluctuation in flow coming out of the mine from anywhere from over 100 gallons a minute to maybe down to 30 gallons a minute during the dry season in the fall, and right now as well. It's actually went up a little bit from the low point when we were up there a couple months ago.
Okay.
So it does fluctuate, and we also put limestone in on top of the liner to hold the liner down as well, and that'll increase the pH a little bit. It didn't increase it much, but it increased it a little bit. So, and as that mine water is exiting that adit, a lot of times, and in this case as well, it's dumping out dissolved solids, a lot of iron. So you'll see a reddish, ironish color sediment in the bottom. So we set up a pond, a little bitty pond right at the beginning of the mine, and it's already starting to, you can see the sediment in it.
Okay, so the sediment's coming out in that pond, and the water continues on.
Yep, and then it flows down over, and we've got another holding pond down below the tailings as well. So hopefully we can catch that. And then another aspect of what we were trying to do was collect any leachate that went through the mine. So as the water exited the mine, it would actually go through the waste rock pile and exit at the bottom of the toe of the waste rock at the end, and the pH down there was lower, and it had a lot higher metals, dissolved metals in it. Because as it percolated down through, it leached like a coffee maker. It would take all those metals out, and the acidity would go down more because of acid mine drainage would be developed in it. So the pH was a lot lower.
Right. And can you talk about some of the implications for habitat, wildlife, et cetera, in terms of having that acidity and those dissolved metals and things.
So I mean, what the Water Coalition and in working with the everybody on it, I mean, their goal is to revitalize Peru Creek, to have it, you know, have fish in it and have, you know, it look a lot nicer. Right now it's sort of this iridescent bluish color because of all the metals that are dissolved in it. So they're trying to get it to where it'll support fish and wildlife habitat. Right now it won't do that because of the elevated levels of metals in it and the pH as well, maybe a little bit. But as we clean up these sites, the water quality is getting better. And so downrange, as the tributaries come into Snake River, it dilutes that out, and fish populations are actually progressing up the Snake River.
Oh, great.
So there are fish down below, and you know, people can fish there, and it just brings in more tourism and more anglers to do some fishing, and it just brings more people in. Is all. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring it back, because there was some original documentation that I'd read in one of our documents where there was people up there fishing when they were first starting the mining up there.
Oh,
so
okay.
there was fish up there at one point, I believe. And, you know, just all the mine drainage, it just, you know, impacted it. Like Brian was saying, I mean, the environment was in the way of making riches back then, and we just didn't realize, you know, what harm it was causing.
Right.
So hopefully over the years we can redevelop the area and get fish and habitat back in there for the animals and fish.
Great. I want to just point out, you did mention that Summit County has been a great partner, which we appreciate, and we appreciate your partnership, certainly. But everything that Summit County is doing wouldn't be possible without the amazing support we have on this issue from the community itself.
Yes,
so Brian,
absolutely.
can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really amazing, the community support that we've gotten, both from the Board of County Commissioners on these various mine cleanups. It's definitely kind of out of the box for an open space program to be. We're on, I think this is we've now done a dozen different projects that are water quality cleanup projects that had an open space connection, because at the end of the day we were able to protect a significant amount of open space in the process. But to go out on a limb and get to know this whole business of how to do mine cleanups and then the recent mill levy that went up, that was supported by the community, that the Safety First brought some money towards these types of projects, and so that we've been able to do several projects since then because of that. This one was not funded by us. It was already kind of in the mill to get done. But you ask about some of the challenges. I think the other challenge really is getting the word out on these successes, because there's been a lot of press that has been pointing to failures on the part of some of these types of projects, but the successes are happening regularly, and they get very little notice compared to a single failure, and that is a real challenge for programs that need to continue having public funding, public support, that kind of thing.
Right, and certainly we have so many great examples of those successes right here in our backyard in Summit County. So we're lucky to have the great partnerships that we do, and the support from the community who really looks out at this beautiful landscape and wants to protect it and to correct and atone for the sins of the past. So Brian or Dwayne, anything else that you'd like to mention that we haven't talked about in regard to this project or mine cleanup in Summit County in general?
Nothing too much to add. Again, we've got other projects that we're continuing to work on with the state. We're also working with the state on closures of hazardous mines. So that's something that we end up finding every year. There's a new hole out there that opens up that we're out there finding. Actually, a couple of them in the last few weeks that just kind of showed up, and they in areas that, you know, you wouldn't expect. But many of these mines, you know, they go miles and miles into the hills, and they were stoping upward towards the surface, and so after a period of time they may just open up. And so there's certainly those issues that people should be aware of, as more and more people are out in the backcountry and enjoying the backcountry. You know, we try to find them, but if people see something and it's like, oh, that shouldn't, that scares me, then let us know. We'll see what we can do about it.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks to both of you for coming in and sharing all this great info on the Jumbo Mine Cleanup Project.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the summit stage winter schedule.